The Avon Historical Society welcomes you to its virtual tour of the Pine Grove one-room schoolhouse in West Avon. Located on the corner of West Avon Road and Harris Road, this one-room schoolhouse was built in 1865. In celebration of the 1976 United States Bicentennial, the Avon Historical Society leased the school from the town, restored it, and opened it to the public. The exterior of the building exhibits some Victorian features, with its high peaked roofline and gingerbread wood detailing. The structure was inspired by drawings for a school in Rhode Island designed by architect Thomas A. Teft. This schoolhouse became District Number 7. Nearby, we see some of the farms and homes where the students lived in what was then a rural community. Students in grades 1 through 8 were taught by one teacher in this one-room schoolhouse. The class each year could range from 5 to 27 students, sometimes including ages 5 to 16. It was a huge challenge for one teacher to cover the curriculum for each grade level. The regular school day was from 9 to 4. Pupils who lived far from school, such as those living in the Sleepy Hollow section of town, now the site of Avon Old Farms Boys School, arrived each day by Shanks Mare. You might call it walking, as there was no school transportation. After students passed through the main door, the boys would turn right and the girls to the left. They stored their coats, lunch pails, and recess equipment in their separate section of the entry. A door on either side provided access to the classroom. Note the original iron sink with a hand pump for children to wash their hands. The children did not drink this water. Instead, potable water was drawn from the neighboring farm's spring. The bucket was passed up and down the aisles, and each child would drink from the dipper. A well dug in 1933 took better care of their needs. Later, it also was deemed unsafe to drink, so water was again brought from Cold Spring Farm across the street. In the classroom, boys and girls were seated on separate sides. Each morning, school began by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, followed by singing My Country, 'Tis of Thee. The interior of the school, though simple, was the newest and most modern of the buildings in the 7 school districts. The original high ceiling is curved and covered with corrugated tin, painted white. As the heat from the stove rose, it was reflected back to warm the students. It also reduced the possibility of fire from the stovepipe, which at times became very hot. The older students were often charged with the responsibility of building the fire in the morning in the long box stove. On cold days, they would carry in wood to keep the fire going throughout the day. The stove served double duty during cold weather as a place to warm sandwiches and heat soup for those who could not go home for lunch. It was also used to dry wet mittens. Signs of advancement over time can be seen as we scan the classroom. In early days, sconces on the walls held oil or kerosene lamps, which provided lighting on dark or stormy days. Lamps also were necessary when the once-a-week evening prayer and singing meetings were held for families in the community. In the 1930s, power was brought to Pine Grove, and the white globe ceiling lights were installed, offering much improved lighting. Students and teachers were happy They no longer had to clean the soot in the old lamps. Behind the teacher's desk is a true blackboard attached to a weight and pulley system. This allowed the blackboard to be raised and lowered for access to the cabinets below. Once lessons were written on the board, it was raised up so the students could see their lessons, even when the teacher was standing by her desk. A roll of maps was attached above the board, and each could be raised or lowered, much like you would move blinds up and down. The other 3 boards in the classroom are slate and are called slate boards or chalkboards. Pupils would have had their own small slate, which could be used on both sides. Slates were surrounded by a wood frame, which provided some protection in case the slate was bumped or dropped. The student would write on the slate with a slate pencil wrapped in paper, just like crayons. The paper helped keep the slate pencils from breaking. Books and slates were very expensive. Such treasures were commonly handed down in the family. The neat rows of desks represent changing styles of numerous decades. Some have adjustable legs to accommodate growing children. Some have lift tops for materials to be stored inside, and others just have an opening facing the student for storage. At one time, the school used double desks, and there is one on display. Several desks have a hole in the upper right-hand corner for an inkwell. Notice the little flap over the hole in the glass well. You would close it after each use to keep the ink from spattering on the desk or on your papers. The ink was permanent and could not be washed off, so students had to be extremely careful. This is the type of pen used by students. They had steel nibs which would fit into the end of the pen. After using a nib for a long time, it might wear down or have a little rough spot or burr on it. It could be sanded so it would write smoothly again. Children used copybooks like these. They practiced to make the letters and words look just like the example at the top of the page, and the teacher would grade them on their penmanship. The teacher's desk is a reproduction of one found in a photograph taken in the school in 1912. It was made in Riverton, Connecticut by the Hitchcock Chair Factory. Many of the artifacts within the schoolhouse, such as books, teacher's handbell, and globe, vary in time periods. The small bells were used to call the children to attention if they were caught whispering or misbehaving. The larger bells were rung when school began and to call students in from recess. Here is a little quiz for you. In this school, we can see some familiar portraits. It was common for the portraits of 2 particular U.S. presidents to be displayed in one-room schoolhouses. Do you know who they are? The man with the white hair is sometimes called the father of our country. The man with the beard was often called Honest Abe. We will give you a moment to see if you know the answer. Yes, President George Washington was our first president of the United States, and that is why they called him the father of our country. Honest Abe was President Abraham Lincoln. In the back of the room, under the regulator school clock, there is a visitor's chair. During the early years, each school district was run by its own school committee. They elected one male parent to serve as the visitor. It was his responsibility to observe the teacher to see if she was doing a responsible job. At the back of the room, there are 2 red doors. The one on the left exited to the woodshed. It was attached to the back of the school, and the south-facing side was open. The wood for the stove was stored there where it was kept dry. The cutting room, which is the red door on the right, was added behind the woodshed in 1900 to provide more storage space. The 2 outhouses were out behind the school on the fence line. In 2012, the one remaining outhouse was restored and placed on a cement slab a bit south of its original location. It is a 2-holer. Recess was a time to use pent-up energy, and a host of common games were played. Hopscotch, hide and seek, tag, swinging on the swings, running relay races, one-a-cap, marbles, steal the bacon, and red rover. Also softball, dodgeball, and shooting baskets. Winter snow time featured fox and geese, making snowmen, building forts, and even having snowball fights. On rainy days, the teacher might read a story, or the students played hens and chicks, duck, duck, goose, or quiet games overseen by the teacher. On occasion, an impromptu spelling bee or other scholastic competition was held. Unfortunately, in 1949, the last 2 one-room schoolhouses in Avon, Pine Grove and Lovely School on Lovely Street, were closed. Educators across the country were in favor of larger, consolidated schools, feeling they were more financially efficient as resources did not have to be duplicated in every district. The students were bused to the new Towpath Elementary School in the center of Avon. From then on, Pine Grove was used as a nursery school, a small branch of the town library, and lastly as the headquarters for the Troop 122 Explorer Boy Scouts. The Scout Troop's maintenance of the building was a boon for historians, as it saved the schoolhouse from falling into disrepair. Since the schoolhouse closed, the following took place. In 2005, a Pine Grove School reunion was held, which drew approximately 20 former students of all ages, along with their families. Fascinating stories of days long past were told and have been recorded for the interest of future generations. They reflect a time in Avon's history which present-day children have a difficult time imagining. Many of the stories and photos of teachers and students over generations are on display in the cutting room when the school is open for visitors. In June 2015, the 150th anniversary of Pine Grove School was celebrated with a rededication of the building. It is open for free tours on Sundays during the summer months, with an Avon Historical Society docent on site to answer questions and tell more about the school. A scavenger hunt is available for 2 age levels. Other tours are by appointment. These early one-room schoolhouses are rapidly disappearing from the historic landscape, but thanks to the efforts of many people, the Pine Grove Schoolhouse has been restored to its original design and will continue to represent a long time ago in Avon's history. The Pine Grove Schoolhouse is on the National Register of Historic Places and is a part of a designated historic district. This includes the school and 5 neighboring farms or farmhouses that are still in existence. Thank you for joining us for this virtual tour of the Pine Grove One-Room Schoolhouse. We hope you will return for an in-person visit in the near future to learn more about the good old school days in West Avon.